Some quick housekeeping. My name is Dan McKnight. I'm excited to be here again this year. I was here last year at this event, and it's a wonderful effort, and I'm glad to be here. But thank you all for being here today. My fellow patriots and Americans, veterans, citizens from every background who are fed up watching our government send our sons and our daughters into one senseless conflict after another. I'm going to say some things today to the politicians that do it that may be the most offensive thing that you can say to a politician in Washington, D.C. The real power in this country does not rest in Washington, D.C. It rests with us, the people in the states. The real power in this country belongs to us, the people, and it's spread over 50 states. The federal government was never intended to be the controller of every minute and every minute aspect of our lives. And it sure as hell wasn't meant to put us in undeclared wars at the behest of the Pentagon or the contractors or the weapons financiers. The United States Constitution, the very founding document that these politicians swear to protect and uphold, defines the limits, the federal power, the limits and the federal power that the government has that we gave to them. It is limited, it is clear, and it is defined. The United States Constitution is our mechanism to level the battlefield. Our forefathers wrote that if the federal government wasn't given a power explicitly, then the authority belongs to the many states or to we the people. Let that sit for just a moment. Our state governments have more power than you've been led to believe by the fake news or the contrived media narratives or the politicians in D.C. Beltway creatures in the deep state want us to think that they hold all of the cards, that they alone can decide when, where, and for how long we go to war, that they can meddle in and dictate to other sovereign nations, that they can deploy our National Guard overseas to extinguish the fires that they flamed, that Dick Cheney, that Don Rumsfeld, that George Bush, that Barack Obama, that they flamed. They want to send our citizen soldiers from Idaho and Arizona and Utah and Montana to go extinguish their fires. I'm here to tell you, as a veteran of the global war on terror and 18 months of combat deployment in Afghanistan, and now the chairman of Bring Our Troops Home, I know it in my bones that Boise, Idaho, and not the Beltway, will stop the war machine. But why is that? Why is it that Boise is going to be able to do this? Because Boise and cities like it around the great country, they represent the true will of the American people. The heartland has the power to say no more. No more sending our National Guard. No more sending the Guard to fight in endless undeclared wars. No more being used and abused as pawns for corporate profits and global power plays. The greatest threat to our democratic system isn't a foreign army. Our greatest threat is not some distant enemy over the next hill. Our greatest threat is undeclared war. It's his insidious influence on the military-industrial complex that President Eisenhower warned us about in that famous address. Beware of the military-industrial complex. That convergence of corporate interests, defense contractors, and lobbyists whose claws are deep in our government pull on the strings and manipulate our country into wars without end, wars with no plan for victory, and wars with no oversight from the people. I may be the one person on the stage today that is not to my core anti-war. I do not believe in war if it has not been properly declared. There is a just war theory that's been presented by Aristotle and Thomas Aquinas and some of the great thinkers that came thousands of years before us. Just war must have the proper authorization of the people that it's being fought on behalf of. Folks, I want you to look around. I want you to look around these beautiful buildings, this tall monument, this beautiful park, the reflecting pool behind us. I want you to look around. This is the war machine right here. Every inch of it, every building, every house, every tree, every blade of grass in this swamp is part of the war machine. You go down K Street and look at the glass and steel buildings. They're all filled with military-industrial complex, defense contractors, weapons manufacturers, and people that are getting rich sending your sons and daughters to war while they sit cozy in a swamp in Washington, D.C. I'm here to tell you there's a way for us to save ourselves. There's a way to defend this country, and it's a way that can be done the way it was supposed to be done. It's called Defend the Guard. I served collectively for 13 years in the United States Army, Marine Corps, and Idaho Army National Guard. My boots were on the ground in the global war on terror, and I love this country to my core. I love the men and women who wear the uniform of this country. I respect and I admire their professionalism, their courage, and their dedication. So let me be as clear as I can. We must stop sending them into these unjust and undeclared wars that do nothing to defend our nation. The wars of the past 25 years have only served the interests of a corrupt political class and a bloated weapons industry. Now, let me take just one moment. Thank you. Let me take one moment and speak directly about the National Guard. These men and women who are supposed to be the backbone of their communities have been abused. They're supposed to be here defending our lives, our property, and our country from a lawless invasion. They're supposed to be here defending our streets. They're supposed to be here responding to natural disasters. They're supposed to be here standing as a safeguard during times of national, state, and local emergency. State and community readiness and the defense of the American soil has taken a distant back seat to the global and financial interests of the war profiteers and the machine that they abuse for blood profits. Our National Guard are routinely being sent off to foreign lands to fight in wars that have no end. And I've spoken with guardsmen around the country. We travel all over the country with this effort. And I talk to folks that are fathers and mothers and sons and daughters who signed up because they wanted to serve their country and they wanted to serve their communities. They wanted to be there in a time of crisis. They wanted to be there as the wall to defend their neighbors and their friends and their family. And even though they've been abused, they've served with great distinction and honor in places like Iraq and Afghanistan and Syria, fighting battles that have nothing to do with keeping America safe. One guardsman I met recently from Alabama told me that in 2018, his unit was deployed to Afghanistan for the second time. While they were there, his home state was hit by a series of devastating tornadoes, followed by looting and lawlessness. By the way, does anybody know what the constitutional purpose of the National Guard is? There's three of them. The first one is to defend the laws of the Union. The second is to put down an insurrection. And the third is to repel an invasion. That first one, defend the laws of the Union. The National Guard should be there when lawlessness and looting starts. Homes were destroyed, lives were lost, property was stolen. And where was he? He wasn't in Mobile, Alabama. He wasn't there helping his friends and family. He wasn't there picking up the pieces. He was half a world away, serving in a war that he couldn't find on a map before he went. Another National Guardsman from California shared a story with me about how he was activated to fight wildfires in California. But before he could respond, before he could even show up, he had orders and was deployed to Syria. His heart was in California, where his family lived under constant threat of fires, but he had to go defend oil wells in Syria. In 2005, the Louisiana National Guard, a unit of combat engineers, was deployed to Iraq. At the same time, Hurricane Katrina bared down on their coast and destroyed their community, and Louisiana was thrust into a state of emergency and devastating destruction. They should have been in New Orleans and Baton Rouge, using their training and their equipment and their professionalism to build roads and bridges and dams and levees. But instead, they were in Baghdad and Ramadi, building roads and bridges and levees and dams. That should make us sick to our core. Why are we doing this? We've got to stop. Dick Cheney and Dom's Rumfield, their apocalyptic mess in Iraq has taken too many lives, too many resources from the state. This isn't just a handful of cases. It's been happening for decades. The National Guard has been turned into the de facto extension of our federal war machine, a resource to be used and abused by the Washington elite while our communities are left vulnerable. This is not what the National Guard was meant to be. These are our neighbors, our first responders, our teachers, our mechanics, our tradesmen. And when national disaster strikes, we need them at home. Defend the Guard legislation. Let me talk for a moment about what this is. Jesus. Defend the Guard cuts the legs out from underneath the war machine. It's simple, it's constitutional, it's powerful. The legislation is simple. It says this: if Congress can't muster the stones to put their name on the line and declare war, then we're not going. That's the legislation. Congress must put their name on the line before we put our boots on the ground. And if they can't do that one simple thing, I've got nothing left for them. I'll leave D.C. and go back to the states where the fight is real. This is how we bring our troops home. This is how we rein in the federal government whose interests have become alien to our own. This is how we prove that the Beltway, that we the people have the final say. If you're one of those patriots who is here willingly standing shoulder to shoulder with other patriots opposed to these wars, then I challenge you to do your duty and enlist in our movement. By visiting defendtheguard.us, sign our petition and help us in the fight. This veteran-led movement is not about stopping one war. It's about restoring the balance of power in our country. It's about reassuring our rights, the rights of the states and of the people. It's about permanently securing our future from the death grips of the crooked, imperialistic political class. Let me close by echoing the wisdom of the great former Secretary of State Daniel Webster, who said this: "It will be the solemn duty of the state government to protect their own authority over their own militia and to interpose between their citizens and the arbitrary power of the federal government." Folks, we've had our bill introduced now in over 30 states with legislative sponsors in places like Arizona and Idaho, Maryland, Maine, New Hampshire, Georgia, Texas. We got Defend the Guard on the ballot in Texas this year under Proposition 6. And in Texas, it received 1.869 million and 83% of the vote. Donald Trump got 1.8 million and 77%. This legislation is more powerful, more popular, and more prevalent in Texas than Donald Trump. This movement has legs. I'll leave you with one thought. The inheritors of what our founding fathers left for us. Our founding fathers, first of all, believed that the states and the people were going to be the balance of this republic, this experiment. And I believe that if the founding fathers were here today, they'd be standing right here on the stage with us. They'd be right here on this platform demanding that Congress do its goddamn job. The inheritors, today's politicians, today's political elite, there are some good ones. And we've been endorsed. This movement's been supported and endorsed by Ron Paul, by Rand Paul, by Thomas Massey, by Tulsi Gabbard, by Robert F. Kennedy Jr., by Vivek Ramaswamy, by Dave Smith, Scott Horton, and Jimmy Dore. All believe that Defend the Guard is the way forward. So visit defendtheguard.us. Please stand with us, sign the petition, become enlisted in our movement, and join us, because Boise and not the Beltway will stop the war machine. Thank you very much.